situation where you find that a look at this,
not necessarily tribal or regional.
but I have said that.
Just starting the newspaper review, and on my hand here is Daily Trust Saturday. Yes, and Daily Trust Saturday is what we will be starting with. On the front page here we have a lead story that says Buhari signs electoral bill, rejects exclusion of appointees from primaries. Wow. And then we have riders that says INEC holds emergency meeting today to begin implementation immediately. We also have will address president's request on political appointees, says Lawan and Gbajabia Miller. It's a huge relief, says governors. It's a step towards free, fair polls, says Atiku and Saraki. And right beside it, you still find major highlights of the Electoral Act 2022. Now, details of that story can be found on page 4 of Daily Trust Saturday as well. Moving on to the cover story, terror on education, untold story of out-of-school children in North Central. Farmer-herder communal crisis take toll in Benue. Returning villagers convert burnt school to church in Nasarawa. Niger parents fear for children's safety, and details of this cover story can be found on page 5 and 6. And we have a feature story that says how Buhari brought fortunes to Daura on page 26. And also Sokoto IDPs, tales of displacement and despair. That's on page 25. Right at the top, you'd find stories saying a billionaire kidnapper, Evans, 2 others sentenced to life imprisonment on page 7. And then on page 8, a story that says why we can't intervene in Sunday Igboho's trial, says ECOWAS court. And if you take a look at the back page, you'd see the backhand there, that's the cartoon. And it talks about, there's a cartoon of Russian President Vladimir Putin on a pulpit, and he's saying, "Come on, everyone, we're just having a harmless brotherly chat." And he's actually seen holding the neck of Ukrainian president. Okay, and with that, we'll move on to more stories from more newspapers.
Well, the next newspaper we're going to look at is the Saturday Punch, and on the top of the front page, the headline there reads, Buhari signs electoral bill, demands fresh amendment. INEC meets today, and the rider says we'll consider review when formal communication is received, says Lawan. That is on the front page of Saturday Punch. Right beside that headline is another one, something we just talked about this morning. Fuel scarcity persists. NMPC engages security agencies to tackle distribution hitches. Well, that is also another story. It can be found on page 6 of the Saturday Punch. Another story on the front page says, ignore those saying I'm sick. I have mental capacity to lead Nigeria. That is attributed to Tinubu. And that story is on page 7. The major headline on the front page of Saturday Punch this morning reads, it's too risky to evacuate 5,600 Nigerians in Ukraine now, says the federal government. And riders there on that story, Nigerians fleeing Russia-Ukraine war stranded at Poland border, say police bar entry, demand visas and authorization letters. And another rider that says, we're hiding in bunkers, internet down, can't get food, fuel. And those are students, Nigerian students in Ukraine trying to flee the conflicts there. Another headline on the front page of Saturday Punch says, judge sentences Evans to life jail, says convict not remorseful. That story is on page 6 of the Saturday Punch. Edo Bank's robbery lasted more than 2 hours, was like war. That is attributed to the Uromi monarch, who actually said that. And a rider there that says 34.5 million naira vehicles recovered. Another interesting headline on the front page of the Saturday Punch says, Buhari's performance not good enough. I'd do better if elected president. That is coming from a 102-year-old aspirant. So if you want to find out why she believes she can do better, you can turn to page 14 of the Saturday Punch. Below on the front page, still, my son's death at ex-Governor Daniel's house, an act of God. That is attributed to the father of late Sergeant Ogunshola. That story is on page 23 of the Punch newspaper. Total varsity shutdown looms as SANU others threaten strike. That is another story on the front page of the Punch. And on the bottom of that front page, the headline reads, Military rules out coup in Nigeria, hiring mercenaries to fight terrorists. Well, if you want to find out why these mercenaries have been hired to fight terrorists, then you can pick up the Saturday Punch for this morning.
All right, with that, we'll move on to the Guardian newspaper. And we have a lead story there that says, INEC summons emergency meeting over new electoral act. Commission to study law for implementation. Buhari seeks further amendment. Ignore president's requests. CSOs urge NAS. Lawal Gbajabiamila praise 9th Assembly. APC PDP exchange fireworks and it's a new dawn, says Atiku and Saraki. Details of that on page 2. And then on Guardian Music, there's a pictorial there of a picture there of Scales saying sweet distractions of Scales. I'm sure it's actually an interview on Scales. All right, so total shutdown of universities looms as NASU SANU mall strike. Details of that can be found on page 3. We also have experts decry rejection of Nigerian foods in international market. This is really a sad one. That's on News Extra on page 28. And then on the footnotes there, you'd find Russia invasion. Ukraine gets first military aid from Poland, says page. You find that details of that story on page 3. If you go to the top there on Guardian Woman, Chidi Anyasodo says many people confuse infatuation with love. And then we also have more stories in the Guardian newspaper if you get a copy. Okay, so with that, we'll move on to more stories.
The next newspaper we're going to be looking at is The Nation newspaper, which is the front page dominated by the headline Electoral Act, row as Buhari seeks amendment of newly signed law. And the riders there says SANS disagree over request to modify Section 84, subsection 12, and what Lawan Gbajabiamila discussed with President. Another rider reads, NINEC meets today over poll timetable and APC, PDP, Atiku, Saraki, others hail signing of Act. That is the major headline on the front page of The Nation. On top of the masthead there's another headline that reads, Constitution Review. Bill seeks to make Senate President, Speaker, Security Council members. And riders there that says traditional rulers to get constitutional role and diaspora voting coming. Those are stories that can be found on The Nation newspaper, specifically on page 5. Osun APC primaries appeal panel dismisses Aregbesol's camp's petition. That is on page 7 of The Nation newspaper. Another headline that reads is Evans, 2 others get life imprisonment for kidnapping businessmen. That story is on page 2, while another story here reads, 2023, I'm not applying for bricklaying job, says Tinubu. So for details of that story, turn to page 7 of The Nation. And those are the headlines on the front page of The Nation newspaper this Saturday.
All right, we'll take the final newspaper here, which is Tribune, Saturday Tribune. And at the top there, you'd see Governor Abiodun promises tough action against ritual killings on page 6. And then on the Electoral Act, lawmakers to consult on section barring ministers, others from contesting posts. And a rider that says Buhari applauded for signing an electoral bill into law, and that's on page 6. The lead here says Nigerian students trapped in Ukraine cry for help, and saying we're citizens of Nigeria and we need help. Please don't neglect us. Don't leave us alone. We have some more riders that say they can't be evacuated now. We've shut airspace, says Ukrainian ambassador. And then we also have hundreds escape to Poland by road. And right below that particular lead, we have, we never disrespected Emir of Kano, says Air Peace. And then Tinubu here saying, I am not sick, I only repaired my knee. And he says, I won't let Nigerians down. And then finally, film on Ayinde Barrister coming soon, says Kelani. These are the stories on the front page of Tribune. And with that, we've reeled out stories from every page of these particular newspapers. Now let's go to Daily Trust newspaper and see what we can actually, discuss. Talking about the Electoral Act Amendment Bill. Buhari has actually finally signed this bill into law, and a lot of people are excited. But that particular clause, that particular clause of excluding appointees from primaries is becoming, somewhat controversial. What do you think about this?
Well, it all depends from where you look at it. A lot of people believe that actually appointees, when they vie for political offices, have an unfair advantage being part of the government at that particular point in time, exactly, and they shouldn't be allowed to run. But at the same time, they are Nigerians, and they should be allowed to run for by being Nigerians, they have the right to actually do that. So it depends on how you look at it, So it is something that a lot of politicians, a lot of lawyers and whatnot are having divergent views about. So I just hope it can be resolved amicably so that things can move on. At least the bill has been signed, which was something that has been raging for a very long time. Exactly. So we've been going back and forth about it. Well, right now it has been signed. Then maybe they should iron out the kinks so that we can get it on with.
Okay, so do you think that particular clause will be worked on or excluded?
Well,
now
definitely.
That after he has actually signed it?
Well, definitely they'll talk about it, and they said they will talk about it, and what they do with it, that remains to be seen. But they definitely will talk about it, as it is the main issue right now being discussed. Earlier it was the issue of primaries, how primaries were going to be held in the selection process and whatnot.
And that was fixed.
Yes, and that has been rectified, or they have sorted that out. So now that remains the issue of the political appointees. Well, that remains to be seen what they come up with.
Okay, now the major highlights of the Electoral Act 2022 is INEC should provide electronic voting machine or any other voting device to determine the procedure for the transfer of results during the general elections. Nomination of candidates shall be by direct, indirect primaries or consensus. A political party that adopts a consensus candidate shall secure the written consent of all cleared aspirants. No political appointee at any level shall be a voting delegate or be voted for at the convention or Congress. And then election expenses by the president or by a presidential candidate should not be more than 5 billion naira. And then for governor, should not be more than 1 billion naira. If you ask me, that is still a lot of money. All right, now let's move on to the cover story, talking about terror on education and the untold story of out-of-school children in North Central. We have the writers talking about communal clashes take toll in Benue State. Not just in Benue State, we have Niger, Sokoto, Zamfara, and more states. Let's not even go into Maiduguri because that's like the origin of where banditry and insecurity actually started. And then the Niger parents actually fear for their children's safety, saying that returning villagers have actually converted. When a crisis like this happens, as Nigerians or as Africans, the first thing they do is actually turn to God.
Yes.
When situations change, when conditions change, you turn to God. And we have here that these returning villagers, rather than, work on themselves, get themselves settled into their communities and all that, they converted a burnt school into a church.
Yeah, well, they actually believe, it's just like you said, and when things go awry, then that is where we turn to, and we turn to a higher power to actually intervene and make situations better for us. So I think that is the priority for them, to actually get divine intervention on what they're currently facing. Insecurity has dealt a serious blow to a lot of things, a lot of people, lots of lives have been destroyed, a lot of things have actually come due to insecurity, and it's something that is there. So it's not really it's not far-fetched that you find people seeking divine intervention to come and rescue them from this current situation. When you read the kind of situation that these people are actually living in, it's really disheartening. Because their lives have been disrupted, and it will never be the same for them again.
Definitely. All right, now what about a billionaire kidnapper Evans and 2 others finally sentenced to life imprisonment?
Yeah, well, that's something that we've all. It was big news back then. Everybody was talking about it, and it was on the front pages. It was on the front burner. Every discussion was headlined by that, and then everything went quiet for a while. You know, and we actually thought at some quarters, we actually thought that it was going to be swept under the carpet and that he has been released. You know, we had all sorts of stories within that period. But right now, coming out to sentence the guy to life and imprisonment, well, I think it's a good one for the judiciary. You know, because we've always had this issue that the judiciary does not mete out the required punishment for most of these things that happen.
But what about the process? Did it take too long?
Well, it all depends. You know, the judicial process. It all depends. You know, lawyers file motions, and there's back and forth, and there's this and there's that. There are things to iron out. So it all depends on how the lawyers actually stretch it out to be. But still, at least there is a conclusion to it. This is a story that we actually we followed from the beginning, and now there's a conclusion to it. Well, most likely there's going to be an appeal, maybe, and still continues.
We'll see how that
exactly,
goes, because he went from pleading guilty to not guilty.
Exactly. So we'll see how that unfolds.
All right. So there's a story here that talks about the president saying it will increase, presidency will increase health sector funding. Now, there's been a lot of fracas when it comes to health in Nigeria, you know, from NARD going to strike, you know, that's resident doctors, and then them being poached by other countries, brain drain, a whole lot of things, and health sector and education mostly not getting enough funding.
Well, probably the issue is not about the funding, I think, really. I don't think funding is the issue. It's how these funds are managed. That is where the problem lies. You know, it's not allocating this money, it's not giving this money, it's not budgeting this money. It's how these monies are actually used. How do you spend them? Where do you spend them? What do you spend them on when it comes to the health sector or the education sector? So really saying you're going to increase the allocations, you're going to increase spending on a particular sector doesn't really make much sense. What we need is a plan. How do you plan to spend these monies that you're budgeting, these monies that you're allocating? How do you plan to spend them to make this thing actually better? We've been talking about this. Health issues, the health sector has been a problem that we've been talking about for a lot of years, for a very long time we've been talking about this issue. And still, every time we say, okay, we're going to spend more money, we're going to throw money at it, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. But it still hasn't worked. So why not try a different tactic? Have a plan. Let's look at this thing. Where do we want to get by a particular set number of years? And then you work towards that, and then we'll see how it goes from there.
Okay, now there's actually a cartoon here. I don't know if you can see this. And it's a cartoon of President Buhari and the rocket as the electoral bill. And, you know, holding a tab there that says the rocket science of signing electoral bill complete. And then the rocket is actually taken off. And the president saying, Eureka, I've done it. So finally.
Yeah,
finally, it has happened. Okay, now let's move on to Trust Sports. And, you know, I think, was it last week or the week before, where we saw a list of male athletes who have actually...
Doping?
Yes.
Yes, yeah.
Male athletes.
We actually looked at that. Well,
yeah, but right now we actually have, I think, more female athletes who have been banned for doping violations. And, you know, like Nigerian female athletes, and they are quite a lot. Chioma Ajunwa, Tosin Adeloye, Falasha Abogang, Mary Onyali, a lot of people.
Yes.
Lots of females.
Yeah, well, we actually talked about this issue when it came up. And, you know, some of these doping violations are not really like doping violations per se. Some of these guys go into these things because they lack nutritionists that can actually tell them exactly what is contained in what they eat. Yes, in what they eat. So sometimes they go and they eat, they take supplements without actually knowing what is there, what composes it, what's the composition. And most of these things contain these banned substances, and they get tested, and they get found wanting. For no, it's not their fault per se, but it is something that should have been provided. I mean, if you are an athlete, you should find somebody that's actually looking at your nutrition, your diet and everything to make sure that you don't.
But do they
fall
actually
into this.
paid? Because these people also need to get paid. So do these athletes actually get paid enough?
Well, that is the thing. Those are a lot of things that we really need to look at. Well, but some of these athletes get paid not by let's say, represent by their country or representing their country, or they take part in meets for their own rankings and whatnot. So they actually go there and they get appearance fees and whatnot. So if you actually are serious about what you're doing in your athletics, then you should. There are basic people that you should have around you, and when a nutritionist or or somebody who looks after your diet is someone that you must have as an athlete.
Very important.
Exactly. So
It's
that
not all
person should be
about
able to look at it.
exercising and
exactly, and not
eating
running and
no.
jumping and doing all that. We're not saying that the athletics organizations or the associations don't have a role to play when it comes to these things. They have a big role to play. But the athletes themselves, it is your career. So you should be able to find out and know what's best for you.
Okay, now on Around and About, talking about crime surges in Abuja highbrow areas, we have writers here. It didn't make it to the front page, by the way, but then we have writers here that say victims recount ordeal, residents not reporting crimes, says FCT police. When it comes to residents not reporting crimes, we've all built like a wall, like literally a wall in our houses. Even our fences are so high up that we don't even see what is going on outside. And most times, even when you're indoors in the safety of your house and you hear someone screaming for help, you don't even bother coming out to check.
Yeah, well,
because of
it doesn't want to attract unnecessary attention. I mean, like if they skipped me and they're on the next person, then why should I attract attention to myself? I mean, that's the mentality that some people actually have.
And then experts have actually blamed it on influx of people and lack of proactive policing. As being responsible for crime surges.
Well, in a lot of things, in a lot of ways, in a lot of things that we do, we are actually always reactive. We're never proactive when it comes to some things like this, and especially in issues like security. We're always reacting to these things and not really being proactive about it. So if we can be able to move away from that reactivity to being more proactive, I think things can be a bit better. And policing in general needs to be improved in Nigeria. We all know that. So that is something that can be able to bring down the crime rate, I think.
Okay. All right, now we have a special report here that talks about Sokoto IDPs, the tales of displacement and despair, and, mothers complaining that their girls are being raped, and, and they're also at the mercy of hoodlums. It's really, really crazy. We just finished talking about how it is difficult for these people to, who are displaced to actually, go back to the communities and start afresh. Like, where do you even start from? How do you go about
that is the problem. Their lives have actually been completely destroyed, and most of them, we talk about picking up the pieces. Some people don't even have the pieces to pick up. You understand? So that's the problem. And this IDP issue is something that we've talked about, and we're still going to keep on talking about it. These people have been uprooted from their homes. They've been taken to these camps. The people who are supposed to be taking care of them are really not taking care of them, and they are part of the problem. So it's really disheartening when you read stories like this. We just hope that these people can get a certain degree or return to a certain degree of normalcy in their own lives within the shortest possible time. We just hope that happens.
Okay. Now, there's a feature here on how a Benue woman lost 3 children to midnight fire, and she said fears of losing her children taunted her for days, even before, their deaths. How could she have stopped it from happening?
Well, it all depends on what happened. It all depends on how the fire came to be, if there were safety measures that have been taken before it actually happened. It depends on the remote causes of it, Sometimes these things happen and there's nothing we can do about it. Sometimes it's through no fault of our own. It could be an electrical issue. It could be something left burning. So it all depends on that. So the situation determines whether or not it could be prevented or it could not happen. The bottom line is it was a very unfortunate thing. It was an unfortunate thing that actually happened, and we pray that she pulls through.
And then, she said the children actually asked about God in heaven hours before dying. So she had to, give them a pep talk about who God is and everything before, they died and all that. I pray that, God grants her the fortitude to be able to bear this huge loss. Reminds me of a story I heard in Kaduna a few days ago of a whole family completely wiped out by midnight fire as well. Okay, the dad, I think, died a few months before, and then the mother, 3 children, and 1 other family member died. So 6 of them were actually buried in the same grave. Like, it's really sad.
Yeah, it is really sad. It's really sad. Well, just like I said earlier, it all depends on the remote causes of these fires. Some of them can be prevented, and some of them are really through no fault of anybody. Well, we just hope that these incidences will not be occurring at a regular basis.
All right, then talking about a physician's diary, you know, and the story for today, that's by Fatima Damagum. The story for today has to do with when doctors play God, talking about IVF and matters arising. IVF has actually, you know, helped a lot of, you know, women who didn't have hope or hope, so actually, you know, getting pregnant and, you know, giving birth. So if you want to find out more about this particular story, then you can grab a copy of Daily Trust Saturday, and, you know, I'm definitely sure you'd have a good read. And with that, we'll go on a break. When we come back, we have more issues on the front page to actually discuss. Stay tuned.
This is Trust TV, documenting the Nigerian story.
Hello, and welcome to Trust TV News Update.
I'm Zainab Bala. For more news, follow us across all our social media platforms.
The nightmare that most of these Pipe residents have dreaded for many years is finally happening.
The place is a skeleton of itself, a place that was once busy with patients trooping in and out.
I'm standing right now. I'm standing on top of the Maloney Hill in the ancient city of Kefi.
Cooperation. I know communities where they are contributing to buy locally manufactured gas to defend themselves.
Being a Nigerian entrepreneur, and I am going to be taking you on a journey to show you the beautiful, the motivational and resilient nature of Nigerian entrepreneurs.
Behind me is the Arewa Textile Mill, established in 1963
and eventually closed down in 2004.
We are still going into some other hideouts to see if any apprehensions will be made tonight.
Let's travel down to Shekau, a community in Yobe State, to talk to Shekau's mother on what she thinks about this development.
Well, even to be a magistrate is a funny thing.
Yes. Have things changed? Is there more corruption now in the judiciary? And what can we do about it?
Well, this is one of the internally displaced camps here in Gusau, the Zamfara State capital.
All right, welcome back. It is still Daybreak Extra on Trust TV. We'll just take a few more minutes to, check out some of the stories, trending on the front pages of the newspapers for today, and then we'll introduce our next guest. All right, so on Saturday Punch, the story of Ukraine, and yesterday, I think as of yesterday, it was it 2,000 or something Nigerians, and then today we have 5,600 Nigerians, Ukraine, who are actually stranded, and the federal government is actually saying that nothing can really be done about it right now.
Of course nothing can be done.
All airports have actually been
closed. Of course nothing can be done. The invasion has already started. Airspace has already been shut down. Then how do you expect to evacuate people when these things have already happened? When these tensions were rising, a lot of countries were actually sending out these things, were evacuating their people, were telling their people to actually know how to move out from. Nothing was said by the federal government. The Nigerian government did not do that. It was after the invasion already started. And how do you expect to airlift people out of a country that is under attack? Definitely they'll have to close their airspace.
A Nigerian actually posted on social media yesterday on Twitter that, what they do is they actually leave via trains. They leave the city, that's Kiev, to other cities via train. And there's actually, what they do is they start with children. Children first go into the train, and then mothers, that's women. And then after women, then Ukrainian citizens that are men. And then after that, black people.
Well,
talking about racism.
They need to find ways of...
Talking about racism and the fact that in this case, because you actually have more and more people coming in, then black people are actually left behind.
Well, the thing is, it's not a question of whether you're black or you're white or you're Nigerian or you're whatever. It's a question of humanity. You understand? This is something that we do not want to see happen. Wars and invasions are not things that we want to see happen. No matter what the color of your skin is, it doesn't really matter, And the thing is, what I'm saying, or what I have said, is why weren't these moves made earlier? We all knew where we were heading towards. We all saw the signs. We knew that this invasion, there was a very high possibility that an invasion could come. And we know that. When things like this happen, the first thing that happens is people shut down their borders. They close their airspace because of stopping things from coming in.
So do you think Nigerian government are not proactive at all?
It's not a question of I think. It's not a question of thinking. They were not. That's just the simple thing. They were not.
Okay, well, there's actually, talks between Russia and Ukraine. Hopefully, they settle for peace.
They have been talking before the invasion started.
Like right now, even now, while the invasion is on, seeing that, a lot of things are not, going the way it should and all that, seeing the consequences, hopefully.
Yeah, well, we can't help but be hopeful that a solution can be found to this.
All right, now talking about a story that Ibrahim has definitely been waiting for, our 102-year-old presidential aspirant, Mama.
This is more than Mama, this is Kaka. Definitely, this is Kaka.
All right, saying the president's performance is not good enough and she will do better if she's elected as a president.
Yes, I mean, like she has shown that she has longevity already. She has lived to be 102.
And she has taken care of generations, her generation, you know, her children.
Exactly,
like
her
3 or 4
children,
generations.
like, you know, so she has experience when it comes to managing people. You know, she knows how to manage people. She knows how to manage resources over a long period of time. So that's, I think, maybe that's where her confidence is coming from, that she can actually hold down the nation. You know, maybe the population of her family right now is more than one particular local government. So she knows how to manage resources. She knows how to manage people. You know, when we're talking about a 102-year-old person, I mean, like, you know, how many generations can you count? How many people can you find in a particular generation? So it's a lot of people, and she knows how to handle herself. So I think she should step into the ring and see whether she or not she can be able to upstage the president.
Okay, now let's talk about another presidential aspirant, Tinubu. You know, he's on every newspaper today talking about, I don't know why, but he's talking about trying to let Nigerians know that, you know, he's here for good and he will do better, you know, than this present administration if he's elected, you know, saying he's not sick. Because a lot of people have actually been peddling rumors saying that he's sick, he's frail, he's old, and he won't be able to, you know, move the country forward or do anything.
Well, the fact that he's old is not a rumor. The fact that he's sick, that is the rumor.
But he said he actually went for a knee surgery, knee work, and he's not sick.
Okay, so he just went to...
He repaired his knee so that he can be strong enough.
So
that he can be strong enough, you know, especially when...
I actually saw a picture of the Ukrainian president in full military regalia, and I mean, like, he was going to the front.
Yeah, I saw that as well.
You understand? So maybe I think that maybe that's what...
And then even the Russian president, you know, going into the gym and, you know, working out. I saw that.
He does that for propaganda reasons. But so maybe that's what Tinubu is aiming for. You know, the bone of contention with everybody talking about Tinubu right now is because of his age. That is the main thing, you know. People believe that he's actually old and he cannot be able to do what is required. So that's the main thing. So definitely you'll have questions about his health, his mental capacity, and all that. But if a 102-year-old Kaka can come out and say, "I want to do this,"
but the 102-year-old, can she walk?
But that is a different thing entirely. In as much as she has the mental capacity to say, "Okay, I want to do this," then
so she
of
has
course.
The mental
How many
capacity?
presidents we have? We've had presidents who couldn't walk. Not in Nigeria, but in other places we've had presidents who couldn't walk. I mean, like American president. I can't remember. I think it's Eisenhower or so. Couldn't walk. He was in a wheelchair, and that didn't stop him from being who he was. You know, so it doesn't really matter whether you can walk or not. If you have the mental capacity to do it, then you can go ahead and do it.
Thank you, Ibrahim. All right, with that, we've come to the end of a newspaper review. When we come back after this break, we'll introduce our guest.
But in a situation where you find that look at this,
not necessarily tribal or regional.
I have said that.